welcome everyone. Really want to thank everyone for your participation and to be part of this important conversation. My name is Sho Cravens. I'm the Associate Dean for International Students and Affairs at Peabody College for Education and Human Development. I just want to, before we start this, I want to just have a couple of housekeeping notes for everyone to make sure when you sign in to have your audio muted, your mic on mute. And also we have collected a lot of great questions from the participants who signed in. So those questions have been sorted and then shared with the speakers. And so if you do have other questions that you have during the conversation, and you can actually put that in the chat, and we have set it up that it would go to the host, and then if you see, when you click on the chat, and you'll see the option to send it to this name called question for, so sending your questions. And that way we can actually, during the conversation, to have that facilitated for you. The way we run this, we have about an hour and 15 minutes, and so it's a very short time. And we will start with an opening remark by our Dean Camilla Benbow. And then the conversation will be facilitated by Dr. Chris Vanags, and with our distinguished honored guest, Ms. Anna Novosad from Ukraine. And then we will follow up with some discussions about call to action and a vigil. So that's the flow of our conversation today. So now with everyone here, I have the honor to turn this conversation to our Dean Camilla Benbow to have the opening remarks for today's session.
Thank you, Sho, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. As many of you will know, the Hubert H. Humphrey Fellowship Program has been an important component of U.S. foreign policy for more than 4 decades. The program builds understanding and peaceful cooperation between the United States and other countries, but also among the many fellows who come to know and learn from each other throughout the course of their experiences. Vanderbilt and Peabody College have been so proud to participate in the program by hosting annual cohorts of Hubert Humphrey Fellows who all share a dedication to education policy, or human development. Many bring deep experiences in the education systems of their home nations, along with a desire to help improve them. And this year, we were especially looking forward to our first complete year of fully in-person programming since the pandemic began. And we also were so excited that Ukraine would be among the 12 nations represented in our cohort. Anna Novosad had worked as an education expert in various international projects, including leading school inspection reform in a Canada-funded project called Support to Ukraine's Reforms for Governance. And most notably, she had previously served Ukraine in its Ministry of Education and Science as head of international cooperation and European integration, as head of the Strategic Planning Directorate, and ultimately as Minister of Education and Science. Ms. Novosad holds a master's degree in analyzing Europe from Maastricht University with a funding from the Open Society Foundation, and a bachelor degree in political science from the National University of Kyiv Mohyla Academy. Other honors include participating in a Canada-Ukraine parliamentary program, the International Visitors Leadership Program funded by the U.S. State Department, and attending the Aspen Institute Central Europe in 2020. She also was awarded the 30 Under 30 Award by the Kyiv Post in 2019, which honors young Ukrainian leaders. Of course, I don't need to tell you that Anna's Humphrey Fellowship was disrupted by Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February, something we are just very, very sad about. In anticipation, she had returned home shortly beforehand to attend to the needs of family members. Once the invasion was launched, she quickly pivoted to procuring supplies and performing humanitarian work to aid her fellow citizens. After several months of this activity, she returned to Nashville with some regret to complete her Humphrey Fellowship. More recently, Anna has begun to address the educational questions that have always motivated her by trying to create opportunities for learning, even in the midst of chaos. And we want to explore that topic with her today. We've asked Chris Vanags to lead the conversation with Anna. Chris is the director of the Peabody Research Office and a research assistant professor in Vanderbilt's Department of Earth Environmental Sciences. Chris's research on soil physics across several continents led him to want to translate his work into transformative STEM educational experiences that connect K-12 education to university research. He has done that in multiple environments, including as part of a 3-year Peabody project in the United Arab Emirates. On a more personal note, Chris's father, Peteris, was a Latvian refugee whose family was forced to flee their home during the Russian occupation in the early 1950s, following the conscription and later assignation of his father, Yanis, by the Russian army. 6 years of Peteris's childhood was spent in a displaced persons camp until his family was sponsored by an American philanthropist, Edward Neiman, who helped him to start a new life in the United States. So I also an immigrant to the United States from Sweden who came to America because of the opportunities that it presented. I'm now very pleased to turn over the discussion to Chris Vanags and Anna Novosad. And with that, let's begin the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean Benbow. I appreciate the introduction. And Anna, I'm very honored to be able to talk to you today, particularly given our shared background across various historical processes. I know that we had a much different trip into work today. I know that my trip in was held up because I had to make sure that my son got off to camp, which is very frustrating. But I understand that you had a much more difficult trip into work to your current location. Can you give us a little bit of insight to what your trip home looked like and how you're doing right now?
Well, first of all, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Dean, for this very kind introduction of yours. And I'm really so happy to see all these very familiar faces of my Humphrey Fellows and people that I worked with in Nashville. Peter Moran, head of our program, like a lot of familiar faces. Sorry, and it's really like a family. Part of the family is here, and I think I'm very thankful for all those who I regretfully do not know personally for joining this conversation. For me, and I think for every single person of my country, it's very, very important that you still remember that full-scale war is going on here, because it's not over and it's just getting worse and worse, unfortunately. So I appreciate every opportunity to talk about it. Yeah, but coming back to your question, Chris, first of all, I'm a bit lost between all these different cities and places that I'm around this last few weeks. But yeah, it feels like, now we are back to the beginning of 20th century when it takes you around a week to get from the US to Ukraine, like as if you have to take a transatlantic ship. Because obviously the sky is closed and no flights are allowed. And our second home now is Warsaw. And, sorry, on the side note, at some point I thought wow, it's so absurd and ironic that the capital that hosts all of us, Warsaw in Poland, has this very strange name, Warsaw, as if it's a city of people who saw the war. And it's just struck me, so yeah, so I returned from the DC to Warsaw, and then it took me 32 hours to by train to get home with the 3 changes. So it's a bit of a challenge right now to travel. But finally, I'm in Kyiv, and now I'm kind of living between Kyiv, my hometown, and the northern city of Chernihiv, where I currently try to help people to renew access to education. But all in all, I'm very happy to be back, because honestly, the same way that it felt in February when it was. And when it was clear that something's coming, it's much easier to be here than to be anywhere abroad, because, you can understand how things go here. And also, I don't have a family of my own. I don't have kids. I don't have to take care of their safety. And for me, there is nothing dignifying just to take care of my own safety, as many millions of my fellows and hundreds of my friends who are now on the front line. I just feel that I have to be here.
Well, and I'm sure they appreciate you being there and being able to help them as you would your own family. I know many of us in the United States, we can't really conceptualize what it's like to have your country invaded by another country. I think in many cases we're sort of isolated in that sense, and there are a couple instances when we've been threatened with potential invasion or nuclear warfare, but all in all, it's just not a part of our psyche. Can you give us a little bit of insight to what it's like to have your country actively being invaded, and to have that threat on the horizon, not just currently, but in the future?
Oh, it was very hard to explain the emotions. Honestly, it's not the best thing in the world to have Russia as your neighbor. And we have one of the biggest borders with this horrible country. And so it always has been our imminent threat. And it happened not yesterday, it happened not months ago, it happened at least 350 years ago when they occupied our country for the first time. And since then, it's been just one large constant battle over independence, because they just cannot stay within their borders. They need to conquer more and more and more, and to make sure that no one surrounding them lives just well. So but I honestly, and I love history, I know quite a lot of history about 20th century, including European history and history of my country. I never would assume that our generation would go through the worst large-scale war since Second World War, because, well, I'm not trying to diminish the atrocities of Balkan War or what happened in Korea or what happened in Vietnam, but in terms of atrocities and the scale, this is just the worst that the world has seen since then. Even though you see me now in perfect Wi-Fi, me sitting 7,000 miles away, right? It doesn't mean that there's nothing going on here. So I never thought that would happen to us, but that morning, just 2 days when I arrived from Nashville to Kyiv, was sitting in this apartment, like at 5 p.m., the whole city woke up because of the first missile attacks. Maybe I can just show a little. Oh, I cannot share the screen, but the whole. If someone could allow me to share screen. Oh yeah, no, yeah, great. Just a sec. Yeah, just 1 second. Just want to show you what we saw from our windows on the first day, on the first hours of that attack. That was a photo of my friend sending me that, we've got missile all over the city. This is just from his window. These are all the missiles flying from all over Kyiv. And I woke up around 4 a.m. and that was clear that the war has started and that we just have to get out of here. And I was living with my brother, his wife, and the little kid of 5-year-old, my niece. And I was it was a feeling that that's it. We're gonna live in occupation, and I'm never gonna get back to Kyiv, because 4 hours after we left, tanks have already been in Kyiv, because there was the first the first kind of line of tanks that enter Ukraine was 60 miles long. 60 miles long line of tanks. I never thought that in my life, and I'm no military expert, but when you see that, you understand that that's it. I mean, how can we fight back? More than 200 tanks at once, and they were already on the streets of Kyiv. So, to be honest, those first days were just one large, endless day when you do not understand which day it is. And I remember we were driving from Kyiv, just driving anywhere with millions from people that we were fleeing the city, and my 5-year-old niece Diane asked me, and she was not understanding what happens, because we woke her up at 5 a.m. and saying we have to get out. And then in an hour in the car, she asked me, Anna, so did Russians come here to kill us? I was like, wow, Diana, yes. That's why we have to run away. Wow. So I cannot explain those emotions, how it feels that you understand that you might be occupied, but thankfully to heroism of people here, Kyiv survived and Kyiv stayed in, but 20% of our country is under occupation. And the months of occupation of Kyiv region, Bucha, Irpin, those little towns, they showed what, maybe I can also show those photos. Just a sec, I'm gonna share it once again. Those little towns, basically Bucha is like I don't know how to make it, slides. Okay, you should see it now better. Yeah, so the Bucha is like Franklin to Nashville. It's a little wealthy town where people of middle and upper class live, and it was under occupation for months. So they occupied it, they were living in people's houses, they were loitering, they were killing people, they were raping women, they were raping infants. When we found out that, I think I was sitting still for a couple of hours. I couldn't comprehend how that can happen. Irpin, the same little city, little town, another Franklin of Kyiv. And it's just one of the cemeteries that appeared after months of occupation. Just one of the cemeteries. They left mass graves. They left, just hundreds and hundreds of people gunshot on the streets.
Anna, if I may, this is being talked about as a peacekeeping mission from the Russian side. Is that how it's being framed from the other side? Is that accurate?
Well, yeah. So on Monday, 22nd, President Putin announced that he starts a so-called special operation with 3 reasons: to denacify Ukraine, because he believes that there are Nazis in this country, even though our president is a Jew and our former prime minister is a Jew, and we have millions of Jews in this country. But we are Nazi in his thinking. Then he said that the second reason of this invasion of the special operation, as he calls it, is demilitarization of Ukraine, because NATO is in Ukraine and it has to be defeated. And the third one was the kind of false pretense of Russia trying to rescue Russian-speaking population who is suppressed here. Even though, half of this country, to me, regretfully, speaks Russian, and no one has ever suppressed them, even though Ukrainian language has been forbidden 164 times during the last 300 years under Russian influence of Ukraine. So those 3 false pretenses, has been framed as reasons for war, and until this very moment, their propaganda shows is that these are valid reasons to, as they say, come and free Ukraine.
And from what I understand, this has been translated down into the educational system. Is that correct? I've heard phrases such as Generation Z. Could you explain some of that?
Yeah. So sorry for kind of switching on and off. I just don't want to kind of keep the slide on. So Generation Z, that was the way I kind of call it. So what Russia uses in Ukraine is this letters Z and V as their new signs. They kind of mark with it all their weapons. They mark all the parades, their uniforms. So letter Z is the official letter of this war for Russia. President Putin proudly wears it on his suits. And so it's like a new swastika. And in many countries, I think including Latvia, well, definitely Estonia and some lands of Germany, it's been forbidden as a fascist sign already. And so, so what they also do is they kind of transport this Z symbolism, the Z cult in the education system. So they force children to pose with this poster. So these are kids from Russian kindergartens. There are hundreds and hundreds of photos you can find on YouTube and internet in general that show students of schools flying in the letter Z, saluting their army for allegedly killing of millions of us here. So it's been, it's now glorified by the education system, and it's been there forever. If this is one thing that I try to convey to, for instance, OECD, that is renowned educational organizations. But I say to them, guys, somehow with all your thorough research, you overlooked just the largest country on this planet having propaganda for 20 years officially in their schools. Cultivating hatred and willingness to kill other nations, Ukrainians, Estonians, Latvians, and having it legally in school system. And no one said anything. No one ever said anything. And to me, it's a huge hypocrisy. And I think this is where a lot of research and education right now has to be focused on, because obviously I understand that there are a lot of wars going on in this country, and a lot of them are ideological. What China does to Mongolian Uyghurs is also kind of stems from their education system. And when the world stays silent, this is what we get in 20 years.
And so even conversely, when we look at how we use our education system to rebuild our country, I mean, at what point, it mentioned early on, my father spent his childhood in a DP camp, right? And so his formative years were spent just trying to get food. How do you begin to normalize education when your country is in such disarray?
Well, I think we are very, very far from normal. Well, in Kyiv, it's you can think that when you're here, you can think that it's even a normal life. People go into restaurants, occasional missiles flying over. Like I was late a bit for this Zoom because all the bridges were closed because of the missile attacks. But all in all, it's a bit back to normal. But our south and our east are occupied. And in there, under occupation, Russians are, first of all, they are either killing or deporting or basically stealing to concentration camps our teachers and also kids. Just to mention, 200,000 Ukrainian children has been stolen and now are kept in concentration camps. I call them concentration camps. Russians call them filtration camps, but this is the concentration camp in 21st century. So they keep those children in there, including in Siberia. So, it's like we are back in 1930 when kids and people are stolen again and sent to Siberia. So part of the country is in that conditions, and they are throwing away and burning, destroying Ukrainian books as fascists did and Nazi did. They are bringing their own teachers from Russia to install in our schools in South and East. So we have that problem, a northern part, and maybe I will share you some pictures when we talk about what I do. The northern part of the country, including Kyiv region, it has been so severely damaged and devastated under occupation and under constant artillery fire in spring that it's just, well, we basically have no schools. They all been bombed, and Russians bomb primarily schools because they think that these are the premises where the soldiers stay. So, for instance, in the city that I tried to help, to Chernihiv, 27 out of 32 schools are bombed completely.
Yeah, I've the last number I looked at, I think it was 207 schools were completely destroyed.
Yeah, completely destroyed in Ukraine. and they continue bombing them. But also we have, so this is like a second part, but the third kind of category, we have a lot of IDPs. So around 2 million children had to be moved to other regions, Western Ukraine or central regions, where there is no kind of actual battlefield. Apart from missiles, there is like nothing apart, only missiles in there. So they are living in shelters. They have to have access to school somehow. So it's like you have to handle so many problems of various size and challenge at once, and there is just no one size fits all approach. But also to me, you know, I'm thankful for all those hundreds, well, not hundreds, dozens of countries for helping our refugees abroad, especially Poland. They hosted more than 500,000 children of ours. But to me, in the long perspective, it's a catastrophe if all those kids stay in Poland and they get assimilated. That's a demographic and cultural and historical nightmare. So I try not to think about the future because it's just too depressing.
Well, I will tell you, we have a home in Latvia still. We have our family home that's being occupied by Russian squatters currently. And you know, when I think about what it looks like rebuilding and repopulating your country with your countrymen, I think that is a consideration of when you can return home. So you had mentioned earlier about the different regions that were being attacked. I think a lot of us don't really understand the geography of what this occupation looks like. Do you have something that can help us to sort of visualize this?
Absolutely. So first maybe I can show you just a sec. First of all, maybe I can start with the size of our country against Russia. So we are yellow, obviously. Oops, just sorry. No, wrong one. This one. So this huge red colored country decided that we pose a threat and decided to deal with this threat as they think. So it's just, you can comprehend the size and what we are going through. So currently we still have, because they are just not ending this soldiers of Russia, we have around 200,000 soldiers on our soil and thousands of tanks. So this is just about the size. Sorry, this is just a sequence of my slides. This is just wanted to show you, since it's here, how Zelensky looked when I worked with him years ago and how he looks now. It's just, you can see what war does to a person. And when I look in the mirror, I also think like, oh my God, I got so old within this 3 months. But just to give you a sense of geography, this map shows you how the Russian attacked us in the first weeks. So they attacked basically along all the borders that they could access, including Belarus, that is, well, de facto under occupation of Russia, and by occupied Crimea. They blocked the Black Sea and Sea of Azov by their warships. So basically it was a total invasion from all sides. And that's why, you know, when we were looking at this map in the first weeks of war, it was like, that's it. I mean, how can we fight back this mess? And just to add to this red parts, they have been under occupation since 2014, when Russia actually declared the war to us back then and occupied the Crimea. But currently, as of 19th of June, situations look like this. So our army was the support of, well, this is a good chance to say that without the support of the US, we probably wouldn't do it. Was all the support that we had, but mostly due to the heroism of the army, they managed to liberate the northern parts, liberate also the Chernobyl nuclear plant. You see it just north above Kyiv. They were capturing it, and finally, because Russians are so stupid, they were digging trenches in Chernobyl woods, and after that, there were a lot of like people ill with radiation in Belarus hospitals. So when they occupy your nuclear plants, it's just like you give a grenade to a monkey. It's it's really really scary. It's probably one of those things that scared us most. And during one of the weeks, they were bombing another nuclear plant here in Zaporizhia. It's the biggest nuclear plant in Europe, and they were firing artillery fire on it. So it's just, you cannot comprehend things like that happening. Yeah, but now this whole red part is just one big front line that where the biggest battles happened. So they basically took out all the troops out of north, and they relocated them to the east to capture two regions here in the east and to keep them under occupation. But yeah, all these red parts do not belong to us right now, and this is where around 1,500 kilometers front line of active battle happening this very moment.
So that area is being continuously occupied. And looking down to the south, of course, Crimea has been occupied since 2014.
Yeah, and Crimea is one of the most militarized places on this planet. They keep all of their warships there. They keep a lot of troops. They keep anti-missile. Yeah, I think they keep also nuclear weapons there. So, and because they also built a bridge between Russia and Crimea just here. They are basically supplying all the weapons endlessly through that bridge. So yeah, it doesn't really look well for us right now, and we have huge losses. Probably around, I don't know, 40 around. Well, no one tells us the exact figures, but around what I hear from my friends who are on the front line, we have 1-to-1 casualties, and Russians lost around 40,000 soldiers. So it's basically what we have lost. And people are just mobilizing, like being drafted. So by now we have an army of around 1 million people, but we just don't have enough weapons for that. So Russians have basically the ratio of weapons is 1-to-10. We have 1, Russia has 10. We have 1 tank, Russia has 10. We have 1 artillery machine, Russia has 10. So that's why it's not looking good for us. And honestly, well, all those friends I talked to who are on the front line, it's really unclear how to win this, and especially how to take back the occupied territories. Because, well, you know, when we were talking with Germany about the supply of weapons, it just miraculously appears that Germany just doesn't have enough, you know. While Russia has been weaponizing during the last 20 years, the rest of the Western world has been so naive that they have been, what's the English word, de-weaponizing, you know, demilitarizing themselves.
That's right. Yeah.
And now we are in a position that basically only Ukraine needs all the weapons that Germany has to at least counter back. So it doesn't really look promising, and yeah, it's just from day to day survival here.
Well, from an outsider's perspective, and I know that you feel under-resourced, and I know that there's a severe imbalance in weapons, but from our perspective, to see the heart that comes out of your troops and out of your leadership is really remarkable. It is amazing that a country of your size has really stood up to a country the size of Russia, to an army that we were able to see on satellite images coming in. It's that big, and for your countrymen and your leadership to show such strong resolve is really remarkable. And I have to commend you on that, and commend you and your countrymen on that. Well,
thank you. To be honest, a lot of us have been surprised, and you know, a lot of us have been concerned and pissed. Sorry, because it's I wish we were better prepared. I wish we were not kind of only relying on heroism, but yeah, it kind of showed that it works. And it's funny how now all this defense intelligence organizations are reviewing how they assess the country's ability to fight back. Yeah, but you know, I kind of tell the joke often, what we kind of joke here in Ukraine, that Russia threatens to to not to conquer, but to kind of how to say to destroy the United States. But currently they are stuck in the village of northern Ukraine. So so yeah, it kind of it showed that you can fight. But you know, like to me, I just hope that the whole world understands that you cannot pacify another dictator. You cannot wait until this happens. You have to be proactive in advance. And it not only happens in Ukraine. I think if Russia took over, if Russia realized their plan, then China would pretty much very quickly do the same to Taiwan if there was no sanctions, no fight back of West apart from the concerns that we saw, by the way, when the Crimea happened, right? I think to us, Crimea and annexation of Crimea in 2014, when no one said anything apart from concerns, it was our Czechoslovakia of 1938 when Hitler came and said, I want Czechoslovakia part of it. And no one said anything. Everyone just agreed that, okay, we see the piece of land that no one knows where it is. What? Czechoslovakia is somewhere there in Eastern Europe. And then we had the worst nightmare of the 20th century in just a year. Exactly the same scenario happened here. You know, to us, to Ukrainians right now, it's just all these historical lines are just so transparent and clear. And I assume that only happens when you go through it, right? You analyze history very differently when it happens in front of your eyes and you understand the reasons that led to it.
That's right. But I think that that's one of the reasons why conversations like this are so important, that we can have these open dialogue with people who are directly impacted by these types of things to understand how it can impact us, you know, globally. And it's not just an isolated incident, as you say. There are global implications for these. We're looking at, and even something as simple as the supply chain issues with food. I mean, countries in Africa that they're not able to get wheat that's coming out of Ukraine. That everybody is impacted by this.
So we've been exporting 40% of wheat that Africa gets, but because all the ports in the sea are blocked and mined, ships cannot go through, and you cannot take through those amounts of wheat through the border by railway. So a lot of African countries will have huge impact over the prices of their bread, of their food, and just to, you know, all these ripple effects have to be kind of clear to everyone, because let's not forget that Syria happened and war in Syria started when they had drought, when they had a huge shortage of food, and when they kind of all rebellion of people against their government happened, and then it led to this horrible war. So ripple effects are sometimes very, very scary, and this is just one of them.
And it is a time for us to sort of think about how we learn about these types of events and how it becomes part of public discourse, and not only in our conversation like we're having right now, but also formalized into our educational system. And I'm wondering how it is that we can sort of help to buffer ourselves from these types of future events. How can we begin to teach our children how to view how we interact globally?
Well, Chris, I wish I had a very clear and structured answer to that. To be honest, I don't know, but one thing I know for sure that we have to be more blunt and straightforward, calling things what they are when they happen. You know, we cannot close our eyes at what happens in Belarus that is occupied by Russia for the last 15 years. They've been having concentration camps for their own people there all this time. But no one said anything, you know, like Russia has been a very friendly country to a lot of people around the world. So I think like exactly this, like, I think we are a bit too deep into this tolerance games. Let's be tolerant towards everything, towards everyone. I think it led us to a bit to nowhere. And I think we faced a situation when democratic values and values of being so kind of considerate of everyone, so tolerant, losing against very totalitarian and aggressive behavior. And I think we have to teach our children to kind of stand against, people who are trying to rip them off of what's of value to them, and to be decisive. That's like what I talk with my niece. Like, yes, Russians are trying to kill us here. I'm not gonna tell you that they are not. You have to know for the rest of your life that this is our enemy that will always try to kill us, because that's been happening for 300 years. And I don't want to kind of sugarcoat it,
Right.
And yeah.
Well, but to sort of push back a little bit about that, because somebody has to come up with that designation of right and wrong, or good and evil. And I think we live in a society where we're getting mixed messages, and we're getting false narratives, and it's hard to determine what is real and what is false and what is fabricated. And I think that once it becomes part of the public discourse, that it can become natural. It can become a narrative that becomes how we talk about ourselves. How do we deal with that? How do we begin to teach people how to see through a false narrative?
Well, I think nowadays, in this amount of information that we process every day, it's just so easy to fall in very quick and very simple conclusions, and just sometimes things just do require more thorough research, more kind of multifaceted understanding, reading more, discussing more, talking more about issues, not jumping into conclusions just because someone read a headline of an article. In order to understand things and act accordingly, you just have to be a bit more knowledgeable, because maybe this is just too simple answer, but I cannot come with something more urgent than that, because when Russian narratives are trying to say that Ukrainian nation or country does not exist and it's just a part of Russia, and when you read it only from the headlines, right, well, this is an image that you get. But when you read the history, then you understand. And then when Kyiv was here blooming, Russia had Moscow was just one swamp. There was nothing, right? But for that, you have to read the history. So yeah, just to spend more time discovering things. And just to finish here, I think this is one thing that this war kind of urged me to do. I started reading more about wars of other countries. I now try to understand what's happening in Northern Ireland, why that happens and what are the sites. I'm trying to understand better what happens between Israel and Palestine. Obviously, I know the basic facts, but I don't know the facets. I've been reading a lot this last, I spent May in DC. I've been reading a lot about Korean War, about Vietnam War. And, astonishingly, a lot of things are so clear to me with regard to the United States foreign policy, because they stem from those events. The strategy stems from those events, right, of the United States and of Russia. So, just we have to read.
That's a challenge. It is a challenge to get our country to where they need to be and to understand. And I think being conscious of those other influences are also helpful, of course. I do want to make sure we get to some questions that have come in, and we have really addressed a lot of them so far. But really, when there's several different groups of questions that came in, and a lot of them were people trying to understand just what's going on and to get that personal perspective on what it's like to be in the Ukraine and what it's like to feel what's going on. But a lot of questions came in that had to do with the rebuilding of education systems and how it is that we can go from something like over 200 bombed school buildings towards an education system that can survive on its own. Where do those resources need to come from in order to do that?
Oh, that's a very an easy question. So first of all, just to say we have quite a large education system. Well, we are quite a large country, not as large as the United States, but still, we had 10 million of kids in this country, and now each and every one of them is affected. And as I mentioned earlier, we have so many different problems from occupied territories to just devastated territories, and the response is very different. So on one territory, you have to do whatever it takes just to keep connection with your people, so that they understand that you are kind of having their backs while they are suffering an occupation. But for instance, in the north, everything is just destroyed, and you have to rebuild things there from scratch. And maybe this is a good chance for me just to show you the picture. So I'll be before that, I will tell you what I do. So back in April, I think I was still in Nashville. I decided that I need, first of all, I need to do something, but I cannot help the whole country. It's just too big, and I'm not a minister. I have no resources, so I have to focus. And I decided that I will focus on that city of Chernihiv. It's a northern city. It's the oldest city in this country. It stems back to 5th century. And if that city would fall under Russian occupation, the road to Kyiv would be more open. So I owe to all those people who died there, because if not them, probably this house where I sit in would not exist right now. And so the education system suffered a lot. And what I'm trying to do now is I'm working with the mayor of the city and with the governor of the region to attract as many resources as possible through the donors organizations like USAID, like Save the Children, like UNICEF, all these big organizations that are now here, but oftentimes very ineffective. I'm trying to kind of push them to focus on what is needed, not to sit in nice hotels in Warsaw and do needs assessment. So I'm trying kind of to get them there, but also I think in a 1 week or 2 weeks time, once we are done with preparation, we will start a huge fundraising to save the schools in Chernihiv. And now I'll just show you. So for that fundraiser, these 2 days I was in Chernihiv, we were doing the photos of all the schools that were freed by Russians as they declared. And I will just show you how they looked, how they look now. And you will understand kind of the scope of damage. Just a second, I will share with you my screen. These are just all the photos. I didn't do a selection. So 13,000 square meters of windows are gone. So no windows in all schools. Everything is blown away. So we have to replace them by September or by October maximum, because it's going to be cold. Mm. So no windows. They were dropping bombs just on schools, like numerous 500 kilos bombs on schools. Yeah, and we just asked kids who were in these schools to come for a little kind of photo shoot.
It helps to put it into context for sure.
Yeah. So all these kids were in Chernihiv when they were bombing. So they were bombing from aviation, from artillery, from missiles, mines, everything. So yeah, these are how schools look right now. There is not much you can do apart from rebuilding them, Yeah, I'm gonna speak myself. This is another school, another, multiple bombs drop on it. So all these kids, they have nowhere to go now.
Students, are they being educated in displaced persons camps, or how are they currently being educated right now?
Right now they are replaced to different schools that in city center that survived. But as of September, we have to do a. So this is how a school looks like if you drop a couple of super heavy bombs on it. And absurdly, the sport kind of, how do you call it, like a sport place, survived in one of these schools, and kids come there to play, and it just looks so absurd when they play, and on the background is that destroyed school. This little kids, they survived in bomb shelters the whole month of March. They were just sitting, and parts of missiles are still laying around the places. It's a hole from the artillery fire. Another bombing. Sorry, that's so that's no windows. So this is how the situation
and how do we get those windows back? Like what organizations do we need to reach out to? I mean, because there are a lot of questions coming in, and to like, what can we do? How
That's
can we
my plan. So what I'm working right now is to set up a charity fund and to set up a very transparent fundraising campaign to fundraise funds for it. But in order to make it really transparent, with the funds that I got from the Embassy of Finland in Kyiv, we are now doing a engineering technical assessment of all the damaged schools to have technical reports on whether they can be rebuilt, what has to be done to fix things, and how much it costs, so that I have calculations per every school, per each 27 school, and then per each kind of venue we do the fundraiser. And so we are now, I set up a team, I found kind of funds to set up a team that now stays in Chernihiv, fundraising communications, who will do fundraising campaign. We will do a dedicated website and do fundraisers across, well, mostly outside, because to be honest, all of us internally, we donate to weapons. So we have no money to donate to something else. So we would have to fundraise across our partners outside. And I really hope that all those contacts that I got in Nashville and in the United States across all this quite wealthy schools, private schools, probably will be eager to help. You know, I plan to mobilize networks like Teach for All and Teach for America, and I'm on the board of Teach for Ukraine in Ukraine, so I have kind of connections to them. Peace Corps, we have huge volunteers organizations. So I hope that, you know, if thousands of people donate $5, it will be so much easier to rebuild the schools than for me pushing UNICEF to finally do something. So
those are slow organizations. Is that right? Yeah, but they are very ineffective, and I do urge your governments not to support them, because they just sit in very warm towns and cities of Warsaw and do nothing. Interesting. So are there organizations that you think are more effective, that they could, that apart from, of course, your own that is on the horizon?
Well, unfortunately mine does not have billions in the pipeline. Some of them, yes. So I do like to work with Finland. I do like to work with USAID because it's kind of more concrete, you know, but the rest I think are just more about their own salaries. Like, you know, for us sitting here in this kind of bomb schools and knowing that the UNICEF manager of mid-level gets $20,000 per month and does nothing to help us, it's really, you know, we are not, to the level of tolerance is somewhere between Belarus and Russia to things like that, you know. So yeah, I do plan to do a huge fundraiser, and I'm not ready with kind of a nice presentation just yet, because this is exactly what we are working on right now, and I would be really, really happy to share it with you. And maybe if any of you who attend this conference, this meeting and Vanderbilt, if you have experience in fundraising, because I do not have it. If you have that experience in the United States, I would be really happy to hear that from you, what works, what doesn't work, and what are the sources that we could use to support these schools. Because honestly, if we don't kind of at least replace the windows, they will just not go to schools. If we do not provide for bomb shelters and the bombing happens again, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I will say that we have put together a resource page that we will share with everybody who's on this meeting, and we can update that accordingly as time goes on and things change and needs change. And so I would encourage everybody who's on this call to please visit that resource. I think it will be quite useful. And I would like to also point out that we are trying to do some programming over here as well, and we have Sho Cravens on the call. And Sho, could you talk a little bit about some of the updates you have for your programs?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Anna. The pictures are heartbreaking, and just and also just for you to very upfront and honestly share your experience, but also your suggestions for us to take action. And I wanted to hear a little bit more from you on the initiative called the Ukrainian Global University. And we have that link also on our resource page that's being shared with everyone here. So my understanding with this Global University, it's a platform on which different entities from Ukraine with President Zelensky's office, but also educational institutions, and working with international partners, especially universities and also K-12 schools, and individuals can also volunteer. So the link is here that I'm gonna put for Sarah to share. And so, for example, for university students who would like to be part of international universities as undergrads, as professional students, or graduate, where we call PhD students, they can be go through this application process with the Ukrainian Global University, and then being vetted, and then they get connected with partnering universities internationally, also scholars, and there are so many scholars that are no longer able to engage in their research, in their academic work, and they can also use this platform. And so we're committed to working with this and to be able to make sure that we pay special attention to the applications coming in for undergraduate students, for professional students, and PhD students, and making sure that with the resources that we have, just as we devote lots of resources for Teach for America, Peace Corps, and Fulbright scholars, in the past, is we will also use what we have as part of the support. But also, I was really interested in seeing some of the information provided for individuals who are interested in providing both their expertise or financial, resources. So maybe share a little bit more about the thinking.
Yeah, well, thank you, Shu. You covered it very, very elegantly and quite fully, but just to add a bit more kind of background. So in the first weeks, it was of the war, it was clear that, 2 million of students that we have in Ukraine are all affected, and they have no universities. A lot of the universities, especially in Eastern Ukraine, have been also bombed to the ground. So they had to kind of move somewhere, and a lot of universities have started offering scholarships, but there was also kind of more room to ask and to request more kind of short-term scholarships for Ukrainians. So together with a team of people, we decided that we will set up this initiative, the Ukraine Global University. It's basically, as you said, it's a platform that provides basically like a one-stop shop for all the universities across the globe and research institutions who wants to provide opportunities for Ukrainians to kind of publish the opportunities that they have there, and to make sure that Ukrainian side helps them to select the right candidates, helps them to check if they have English proficiency, to make sure that they have all the documents, because a lot of kind of documents are lost in the war. So we help them to renew the docs. Things like that. But also it's basically like by now it's an official, supported by the president initiative that helps to approach various universities, including Vanderbilt, to ask for support of the Ukrainian students and researchers. And there are also, if you go to the website, there's an ability to kind of offer your help. For instance, if you're a researcher and you look for partners for your research project, for instance, you can also kind of supply that, provide that suggestion on the platform. So basically, it's like it's a matching platform for Ukrainians and the world universities. And so far, it proves to work well, because there are hundreds of people who already use that and got enrolled in the universities. And also we are including boarding schools, mostly in the US, into that system. And we are very proud that our last kind of new partnership was with the military boarding schools in the US, who provided scholarships to Ukrainian children.
It sounds like a great program, and I hope that it's able to thrive and be well supported from across the country. So we did had one last question coming in that I sort of wanted to get to, because it is topical based on what's been happening with Ukrainian receiving the EU candidate country status today, which is quite a remarkable feat. The question that came in is, what is the perspective that the possible EU integration provides to country in terms of conflict resolution, recovery, and the development of educational system in line with EU standards?
Well, to us, we understand that the status of candidate is basically a carrot that has to be given, and that there are years and years of effort from our side to comply with the EU candidacy requirements. But on the other side, if you look at Ukraine over the last 10 years, there has been so much fight for democracy. There has been so much fight and death over our European choice. When we had Revolution of Dignity back in 2013 and 14, when we was together with the students were fighting back the decision of our back president who fled to Russia after that, to his decision to not to join the EU and not to sign the association agreement, and the multiple deaths as follow up. To us, it was a physical dying for that European choice. And we were doing that not for the EU, obviously, but for us, because we are not culturally, mentally, we're not part of Russia. We belong to the Western family, to the European Union, mentally at least, and we want to be there also legally. So for us, it's a civilizational choice. And we've been fighting for that again physically, and this war is just one huge, large-scale battle over our civilizational choice. So to us, it's very, very important and symbolical to have that, because it's been a bit of hypocrisy that we heard from many countries, mostly Germany. That you might someday maybe get it, or maybe not. We will send you weapons, or maybe not. So it's been a bit of this, not very straightforward position towards us, and we are happy to have it, but also we understand that it will take years for us to comply with all the requirements, especially on the corruption side. But with regard to education, there are no one-size-fits-all policies requested by the EU. But obviously, we will try to strive to be at least on the OECD average. And we almost had that before the war, but now with all this devastation that I showed you, and millions of our children outside of the country, it will take us decades to get it back at least to the level that it were. But the EU is also a great source of funds for us to rebuild, and we hope that it just will be an effective help. And we do hope for a new Marshall Plan for Ukraine, as once was done by the United States, a Marshall Plan for the post-Second World War Europe.
Mm-hmm. Well, just know that you have a lot of people globally who are supporting you in this effort, and are thinking about you and your ability to carry on and to lead this country in the educational system and try to rebuild things as they are. I do want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about this. This has been very enlightening for me, and I'm sure for a lot of other people on this call.
Yeah, I appreciate Chris, and I really appreciate everyone here, every face that I see, every black box that I did not see, but I hope you heard us. Guys, I do appreciate it. And, as I said, I know there are many conflicts going on this planet. But if the world would take action against what Russians did in Syria, because they did exactly the same what they did to Ukrainian cities, they bombed it to ashes, they bombed Aleppo. If the world did a bit more, maybe we wouldn't have it. So it's just, for me, one big kind of sequence, of events that unfold, and they might not unfold if we take some action, or at least if we are aware of, because I know that the gas prices in many of your countries rise up, but for us, 5 cents of your gas is just the price of one life, probably here. you have that influence, we have that influence here. So we do hope that you will continue pressing Russia, and we do hope that you will support your governments and push your governments to do that, because they do not only want us to die, they want the whole collective West, the cultural, the West of values to be dead. And I hope that's clear to everyone. And I appreciate all of you for listening to this today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anna. We really appreciate you and all that you shared with us, your experiences, your knowledge, but most importantly, you shared with us your heart. And you've inspired us, not just by your words, but truly your actions. And so before we close today, we want to take this time to honor and remember the people of Ukraine listening to you. Seeing the horrific acts of the war, the killings of thousands, and the displacements of millions definitely reminds us of the urgent need to fight for the ideals of democracy, and as you said, stand against the dangers of autocracy. Watching this unimaginable happen, we see how much work must be done. Intolerance, the abuse of power, the lack of transparency anywhere is definitely an attack on the values that we hold true here at Peabody, at Vanderbilt, in the United States, and around much of the world. And as we have passionate educators, humble leaders here, dedicated servants, we all have the opportunity to make a difference and bring peace and understanding to our corner of the world, no matter how large or small. So as we come together as a community to stand vigil, reflect on that, all we've learned today from you, Anna, honor the lives lost. Let's also commit our collective actions to bring a light to our communities and the communities around the world. So let's now have a moment of silence for those fighting in Ukraine and for all that must be done by each of us. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. And before we close, I know Sho has a few closing remarks.
I just want to thank everyone for being part of this conversation, and resources will be shared, and the recording link also will be shared with everyone who has signed up for this event. Thank you for participating. Anna, thank you again. Please be safe and stay in touch. We are your home, your academic home, and then your American home. So you can always call on us to help you and to support you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.